Good morning and welcome to the Student Hub Live, the Open University's live online interactive platform to facilitate academic community. My name's Karen Foley and I'm a lecturer here at the Open University, and in today's programme we're going to talk about moving on to your next module or your next level, and also summer study. And I've arranged a selection of tutors, central academic members of staff and students to come and give their advice to you about moving on from level 2 to level 3, moving up to level 2, about how to revise over the summer and revisit material from your previous modules, and also about registering for your next modules with our student support team. So there's plenty to talk about today in our programme, but this is an opportunity also for you to talk to each other, to ask us questions, and to do that you can chat in the chat box. We've also got some various polls and things that you can fill us in. You can tell us where you are, you can tell us how you're feeling, what you're most excited about, what you're worried about, what you're studying, which level you're studying, and where you are in the country. Now, to click on any of those items, you just select the one you'd like to tell us what you think about, and then if it's a map, you just tell us where you are. If it's a multi-choice question, you just click on the option that applies. And if it's one of our word clouds where there are 3 options, then you can put 1, 2 or 3 things in, but you need to fill all the boxes, otherwise your results won't submit. So if you can only think of 1 or 2 things, just put a full stop or a cross in, and then your results will submit, and you can see what other people at home have to say too. Now, bringing your conversation into the studio is HJ, who's on our hot desk, looking very summery today.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying my best. I've got a few different things to try out. We've got to get ready for summer. Just finished modules, so this is my hat so far. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Let me know what you think. But yeah, we're all excited and good to go in the chat. Joanne and Sam joined us very early this morning. I'm sure it's just out of pure excitement for today's events. Anna's joining us in the chat, and Jamie Dyson, where he is. Unfortunately, the sun has got his hat on, but hopefully it'll clear up and be nice and sunny. And Davin is having a nice and sunny day at the moment, and he's procrastinating with us by watching Student Hub while waiting for his final project proposal to be approved. So fingers crossed it'll all go well. I know Anna likes my hat, which is fantastic. So in the chat today, as always, anything goes. Your thoughts, comments or questions for our guests, we'll love to hear it. You can also tweet us at Student Hub Live, or if there's anything you want to email to us, you can email studenthub@open.ac.uk. And my wonderful board behind me, all your favourite thoughts, comments or questions I'm going to put up there, and we'll feature them as well. And we've got some pictures on the board as well so far, so just some little ones. If you'd like to send in any pictures of your study buddies, we've got Jack sent in by Sarah featuring some lovely glasses. I've got my little selfie up there, and Katie sent in her favourite study cheat, which is going for a bento box after. So that's fantastic. So yeah, if you want to send anything in to us, we'd love to see it, and anything goes in the chat.
Brilliant. Thank you, HJ. And the sun is shining very much on your board there, so that's looking lovely. So in today's programme, the first part of today's session this morning is going to deal with generic study. So we're going to talk about preparing for level 2 with Isabella Henman. Then we're going to look at preparing for level 3 with Rachel Penny. Gemma Godfrey is going to talk about revisiting material from the past for the future. And then Joe Clark and Paul Dyer from our student support team are going to talk about registering for your next module. In the afternoon session, we have a showcase from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences dealing with various qualifications and modules, so that might be of interest to you also. And then this evening, we've got a discussion with George Kinder, all the way from the States, talking to us about his idea about an age for a global civilization. So, without further ado, Isabella, you're here to talk about preparing for level 2. Now, you're a tutor and you've had a huge amount of experience with students moving from level 1 to level 2. And very often, students will finish their module and then think, right, level 2, what's going to be different? And so we wanted to have this session to really prepare students for that, and also to give them some advice about what they might be able to do over the summer to get themselves ready. So what is the main difference? I mean, how would you sort of conceptualise the difference between level 1 and level 2?
Well, when I was thinking about this, I thought anybody who's seen me before knows that I tend to talk about chocolate and food and cake. So I thought actually the cake example is a great one. Now, I had a book my sister and I used quite a lot when we were little. In fact, I've still got it, a Cooking with Mother book. And when you had a recipe for that, it took you through from the very, very basics. So it said, put your apron on, wash your hands, get your bowl out, get your spoon out, get everything like that out, and then took you on to some simple recipes. But if you think about the kind of recipes you do nowadays, if you're an adult, you don't have to worry about that because that's foregone conclusions. It's information you already know. So you go straight on to what you're actually doing. Here are the ingredients, combine them. And I thought that's probably in some ways quite similar to the difference between level 1 and level 2. At level 1, it's not that we're babying you, but we are teaching you the skills in order to know how to learn. So you need to get your computer out, you need to get yourself a study space, you need to think about the time that you've got available, you need to learn how to take notes. And that's all part of the module. So several of the modules I tutor, particularly at the start, there will be sections, write down how much time it's taking you to do this. Whereas once you're moving on to level 2, it's assumed that you know that because you've built those skills in level 1. So you're actually going to be going, right, it's not that it's massively complicated material, but we assume you know how to turn your computer on, you know how to find the relevant parts, you know where the ETMA system is, you know how to access videos, you know how to access your online room, you know how to find tutorial information and forums, because you learnt that at level 1. So that's sort of almost like one of the first fundamental differences. You've got expectations, you've learnt this, you're building on it. We're not teaching you it again, move up to the next thing.
And so there's stuff about like the processes and things like you've talked about. But what about the skills? Things like, you know, we often give students ideas about how to reference in the TMA guidance at level 1, whereas at level 2 that's gone. Yeah,
well, there will be still guidance because different modules, unfortunately, referencing is one of those things that winds people up so much. And the reality is there is no one referencing system. There is the OU Harvard referencing system that's used at the moment in lots of modules, not all of them. But every module will tell you. But probably one of the main differences about referencing between level 1 and level 2 is that you have to reference. Level 1, we're starting you getting used to it, and if you've given at least an in-text citation and at least an end reference, you'll get the marks. At level 2, you're expected to do them correctly. So each time you take a piece of information, there should be a citation, and that should be matched with the end reference. And there will be marks allocated for that, and there also would be marks taken off. So when you get to your first TMA, it will be you'll have guidance of that, so you'll be expected to do it. Tutors probably won't penalise quite as harshly because they'll be going, right, okay, great, you've had a go, you need to neaten this up, and then gradually you get more used to it, and therefore you tighten it up.
So there's still this sort of ramping process like at level 1.
But you have to be quite careful because there are things that do count that you get marks for, and therefore if you've got marks for, you can have marks taken off for that will apply from right at the start of the module. Not in a scary way, but don't expect to go, oh, that's okay, I can forget everything and it's okay, and I'll be able to pick it up part of the way through the module. Sometimes we find that students go, oh, oh, crumbs, I didn't realise I actually needed to do that. So make sure, many sites have a are you ready for or some kind of a preparation site or a primer. As soon as you can get access to that, have a look. If there's something where it says these are the kinds of skills we expect you to know, spend the summer making sure you know them. There's all sorts of things like open learn courses or guides, or revisiting your current module, the one you've just finished, some of the key skills from that, because you need to build on them.
Now, one of the key things is that you can't it's pointless revisiting everything. And it's very important to understand which skills you need to work on. I mean, you've mentioned referencing, for example, and then there are various other things, essay writing and stuff like that. How do students then sort of get a sense of what is important and where they need to focus their attention in terms of revisiting things? How do they understand really, I guess, the purpose of that next module?
So the revisiting the module that they've just finished, the learning outcomes are always one of the best things. And so maybe have a look and collate them together all in one document. Some modules have them in one document, sometimes actually getting them yourself and sort of answering them, as it were. OK, you've done your final EMA, or you might still have your exam to go this week or next week. So you still have that, but once you've finished, make sure you've got that, so you get a really good understanding of what was that module teaching you. Are you confident with that? Make sure you know that, because then you might need to use it again. Obviously, it depends on your programme, because it might be that often level 1 is quite interdisciplinary, and it's covering quite a lot, whereas you start getting a bit more like the pyramid effect as we're going, so you get more specialised up to level 2. So have a look at the level 2 modules that you're going to do. And work out what's that module described as. What are the key skills? And it will give you an information on the registration page. It will say this module is covering X, Y, and Z, and make sure that you will have an idea about what kinds of things you've already done towards that, so you can have a go. Obviously, you haven't got the module material yet, so you can't do all of that. But having a good idea about what you've studied, making it clear in your head why, how it fits together, and then think about what you're going to go on to study.
Brilliant. Well, Isabella, we've been asking people at home what they're studying, and 40% of people watching right now are stepping up from level 1 to level 2, so that's great. And we asked them what's different at level 2. So let's take a look and see what some of the words were, and then maybe we can pick up some examples from that. So it's going to be harder, more time, complexity, independence, more intense, challenging, and harder. Is it harder?
Well, in some ways, yes. And actually, to be completely honest, I probably shouldn't just say in some ways. Yes, it is harder. It's the difference between those of you who did GCSEs and A-levels. You might have done really well in your GCSEs. Once you did the step up to A-level, it is harder. I personally had the experience. I was fine with maths. GCSE, absolutely fine. When I did the step up to A-level, I struggled massively. And in fact, I changed to a different course because to me, the step up was quite a lot. So think about the difference. It is a different level. It is level 2. So it's the equivalent of if you were going to a big university with a 3-year course. Everything you've learnt at level 1, you now need to know that and do the information because there are more facts. Because going back to this skill idea, because we're teaching you a lot of the skills of studying at level 1, you need to know those to be able to access the information in level 2. So it is harder because by definition you are moving on. So if you think about when you were going through school, you had harder information as you got further through because you're able to cope with it. But that's the thing, you are able to cope with it. You've got through your level 1 modules, you've learnt the information, use that information to help you at level 2.
Well, we asked people at home how prepared they felt for study at level 2, and 33% said quite prepared. Nobody said very prepared, and 67% said not well prepared. Okay. And then we also asked what their biggest concerns were, so let's see what people said about that. Time is the key factor here. Exams often coming into play from end of module assessments. Health difficulty, level of detail, family commitments, essays and fitting it all in. So some very, very common things here. Interestingly, not to do with the complexity of the module material, but with those other issues of fitting it all in and finding that time to focus.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something quite important and something as I tutor level 1, access level 1 and level 2. And I think the biggest issue I have with my level 2 students is most level 1 modules are 60 credits and then level 2 quite often they can be 30. 2 30s is not the same as 1 60. 2 times 30 equals 60, but not in terms of modules because you're doing different things. And what I often find is students who go, well, I'm going to step up from level 1 to level 2, but I'm also going to step up and commit way more time without necessarily thinking, actually, have I got that time? So at level 1, 60 credits is 16 to 20 hours a week. So level 2, it's the same amount, but you've got to be thinking about it. It's not going to be less just because you've been studying already. And some of the bits might take you more time to get to grips with it, depending on what your skills are. So I think the biggest bit of advice is try not to bite off more than you can chew, because that's when it gets frustrating and demoralising, because you think, oh, I'm going to do all this and it'll be great. And you start off at this point saying, yeah, it'll be fab. And then you get to the realisation that actually you can't fit in 40 hours of study every week alongside a family. And that's sadly the reality. Some people do it fantastically, absolutely. But a lot of people find it actually, practically, it doesn't work. So unless you absolutely have to get your study done in the minimum amount of time possible, if you want to get good marks, make sure you give yourself enough time so that you can get those marks. Because if you don't have enough time, it doesn't matter how well you understand it, you just don't have time. We know that from the kind of work that we're doing as well. And we don't want our students to be disadvantaged.
You want to enjoy your qualification and degree, and the marks start mattering at level 2, whereas at level 1 you just need to pass. Level 2 they start mattering, level 3 they matter a lot.
Yeah, and that's actually another very good point, because in the degree pathway the level 1 marks don't count towards your final grade, but level 2 they do. So you don't want to, again, disadvantage yourself. If you want to try and get a really good grade, give yourself the best chance. And I'm not trying to be negative, I'm honestly not. I want to help students do as well as they can, and if you take on too much, it's very, very difficult to be able to do that.
We'll be talking to our student support team a bit later about their advice for that.
Yeah.
But I want to just go to HJ.
I thought I'd try something out new again. I've tried the hat, maybe these sunglasses. I'm not sure what a good situation would be for these sunglasses. Maybe the beach. I'm not too sure. We'll see what everyone else thinks. But we're doing all well in the chat. There's quite a lot of people going from level 1 to level 2. Anna's looking to do Worlds of English next as a module. Very interesting module, I've heard. And Kirsten is doing 2 level 2 modules next. She's doing human biology and issues in health and social care. So all the best for that. And Davin's got a fantastic tip that I'm going to put on our board. He said, while we're on our break, why not look through some previous assignments, see if there's any tips we can write down and put forward, which I think is absolutely fantastic. It's probably the best tip I've heard today. And Caroline is looking to do level 3. We're talking about that in a bit. She is nervous, but tips about progressing, whether it's to level 2 or level 3, are always useful, and we're finding it useful. But yeah, what do you think, Isabel, about doing 2 level 2 modules? Any tips on that one?
Well, actually, funnily enough, I do that human biology module, and I have most of my students are doing that alongside another one. I was just trying to work out which was the other one, because health and social care. Yeah, I think the biggest tip there is you need to be really organised. You can do it. It's up to, because SK299 human biology is 6 to 10 hours a week, so you can do it. So overall, the 16 to 20 hours a week for 60 points is perfectly possible. You need to be organised. Make sure, get yourself a calendar, get yourself, work out when your dates are.
The assignments will be very similar,
Absolutely.
won't they?
And the reason for that is not to try and make it awkward. It's because if you've got a certain length of module and you assess it 3 times, there's natural breaks to when that happens. So there's nothing wrong with doing things early. Absolutely nothing wrong. And I'm already getting myself ready for the module I'm doing in the autumn and thinking, well, I've got to do as much as I can early to avoid choke points. And that's the best thing to do. Be organised. My students that do it say, right, I do this module this day, and I've got the timetable, and I know this is my brain today. Right, I'm going to go on to a different brain the next day, because that's the way it works best. If you try and study both things exactly at the same time, it gets really confusing, because you just don't know what you're doing.
And you must always put the thing in the module that's for that module as well. You mustn't cross them over and make that common mistake, because you are being assessed on what's in. HJ, has that helped?
I think it has helped, because a lot of us are quite worried about moving up onto level 2, and especially 2 modules at once. We some of us in the chat haven't done it before, so yes, very useful. And I think just confidence as well. But I know when I was studying as well, I found the transition from level 1 to level 2 a bit harder than 2 to 3. So it all prepares you well, and I think it's individual on what you're doing as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's the realising that you need to do it. I think the problem is sometimes is everybody can go, fab, I finished level 1, yay, I'm just going to have the whole summer off. And therefore it actually gets that much more difficult, because you come to middle of September, it's suddenly, get my brain back again. It takes that much time to do it. So not that we want you to spend your whole summer studying, but Davin's tip was fantastic. Go through, work out what you're doing well. If you can identify the kinds of things that you do well, make sure you build on them. But then also look at the kinds of things. Was there something your tutor consistently said? And
I'm going to quiz Gemma on that later and see how she's going to do it, because it all sounds good in theory, but I want to find out how people actually do it in practice as well. Now, Isabella, one thing I wanted to ask you as a tutor is this. When you're doing level 2, right, things get slightly more, as you said, less detailed. So you're expected to do the assessment, and you're also expected to do different sorts of things, be slightly less descriptive, as you were starting to talk about the Cooking with Mother recipe book. So your complexity is increasing. How do you work with your tutor to really understand what is required for that specific assignment, so that you can do the referencing, know where the marks are allocated for certain things? Because I think the tutor relationship becomes so much more important as you move up levels. So what's your advice to students about starting to think about working with their tutors, and maybe thinking about how they might sort of think about how they want that relationship to work when it happens in September?
Well, firstly, when the timetables for tutorials come out, prioritise them. Tutorials are optional, but they are really, really useful. And what we try and do as tutors is give you as many bits of guidance as we can to help you through. And it can be a bit heartbreaking when you run a tutorial and you know people haven't turned up, and then they make the very mistakes that you've tried to warn them against. So please try and carve out that time. And that comes within the study time to try and do that. Obviously, there are lots of different tutorials. You don't have to go to them all. But if you can try and do that. And then your tutors will, when they send out welcome messages, what we tend to do is say, if there's anything you're concerned about, please let me know. And if somebody lets me know, that's fab. If you don't let the tutor know, we honestly don't know, and we can try and help. So if you're worried about essay writing, if you're worried about referencing, we can help. We can give you a bit of guidance. if the module has a primer or it has some kind of a guide or module guide, look through that, because that will cover a lot of the skills that are needed and will give you actually quite a good idea. I think sometimes the temptation is to go, oh, I've got everything. Oh, I'm going to skip straight to the factual information and not actually spend the time reading the guides. Back in the day when we used to get the paper guides, it always used to say there was a piece of paper that said, this is it, read this first. And it gave you the module guide, and I always used to read through it first. I mean, of course, you forget some of it. That's obvious, but it helps do that, underline bits and work out the kinds of things you think. If you're looking at something, have a look. If you can, remember that bit where you registered, what it said the module was about. If there's some things where you think, that bit I think I'm going to struggle with a bit more, say to your tutor, right, OK, I'm really confident with this. At level 1, I found this bit, but at level 1, I struggled with this. Are you going to be able to help me? Is this going to be an issue? Yeah. If you ask us, we can help. Yeah. Obviously, we can't tell you answers, and we can't tell you how to approach TMA questions precisely, but particularly the first TMA at level 2 often does still have a lot of guidance. So it's not the same kind of really, really detailed mark breakdown as you get at level 1, where it's saying two marks for this, 2 marks for that, and so on. And it's more likely to say there's 30 marks, of which 8 will be for style and clarity and referencing. But you can still break it down. You go, OK, it's a bit easier to work it out that way, to read the information.
Excellent. I like that. Thank you, Isabella. Now, we need some feedback on HJ's looks for the beach, because he's put a lot of effort into looking all summery. So I'd like to know which look you think is going best. And also, I'd like to tell you that Isabella and I run a whole series of workshops. We've planned a massive amount for the September start, all about revisiting some of these key skills. So we'll be talking about essay planning, essay writing, critical evaluation, and all of these things are in Adobe Connect. So you can book in and attend those online workshops and spend just 1 hour revisiting some of those skills as well. So it's nice to be able to put a face to a name, which we don't have on Adobe Connect, Isabella. So thank you very much for coming along today. Any other questions that we haven't covered, HJ?
I think we're doing that well this morning. A lot of people like attending tutorials as well for the tips and advice, and always say speaking to your tutor is the best thing to do. But yeah, we're doing really well. I think some of the tips about moving on we're finding very useful, especially Anna, who's looking to English modules. So we're doing well.
Great. Thank you so much, HJ, and thank you, Isabella. We've now got a short video to play you, and some of you were speaking about fitting in your time, and here is a student story from Paul, who talks about fitting in study around work and family. Then we'll be back with Rachel Penny to talk about moving up to level 3. See you in a minute.